In colloquial terms, it said, "Don't do good, and you won't receive harm." I learned this wisdom even through personal experience. The first time I got married at 18, it was out of great love, but it turned out that the love wasn't as enduring as I thought. Over the course of just 3 years, practical issues and mutual grievances eroded it, leading to a peaceful divorce. Since we didn't have children and there wasn't much to divide, I can say the experience left me with some lessons, but no lingering negativity from the unsuccessful attempt at building a family. 5 years after the divorce passed unnoticed. I graduated from college, got a job, traveled, had relationships that came and went. Overall, I led an active lifestyle. My parents helped with the initial down payment for a mortgage, and with hard work, I managed to pay it off early. After renovating my apartment, I finally started contemplating the idea of creating a family. My parents were already hinting that it was time for them to indulge in grandchildren. At that time, I was in a romantic relationship with a colleague named Harry. He had been showing me attention for several months, inviting me to cafes for dates. In one such moment, he unexpectedly proposed to me. The proposal caught me off guard initially, but I thought, well, getting married again might be interesting, even if it's not based on profound love, as my past experience has shown that doesn't always lead to a strong marriage. So, without dwelling on it too much, I accepted the proposal, viewing it as more than just enjoyable companionship with a man. I wasn't accustomed to it, and agreed to marry Harry. I always liked him, always clean-shaven, well-dressed, and not one to indulge in empty talk. Though, admittedly, he was a bit stingy. For instance, when we went out together, say to the theater, we'd each pay for ourselves. On the other hand, outings to the theater or art exhibitions were primarily my ideas, so at that time, I didn't pay much attention to this detail. We didn't opt for an extravagant wedding with Harry. I didn't feel the need for it, especially since I had already been through such a ceremony and even played the leading role. Harry mentioned, by the way, this is my first marriage. He believed it was foolish to waste money on a show for relatives. Instead, we decided to go on a 3-week honeymoon trip to Turkey immediately after the wedding. Upon our return, we started living in my apartment. Before the wedding, Harry lived with his mother in a 2-bedroom apartment. A few months after the wedding, my beloved grandmother passed away. She lived alone in her apartment, and I used to visit her often, covering the costs for a caregiver and grocery deliveries. When Harry learned how much money I spent on my grandmother, he immediately began expressing his opinion that I was throwing money away. William was born frail and weak, she explained. Doctors didn't want to allow me to keep him. They probably said he was unfit for experiments. But I stole him at night and ran away. The next morning, doctors and the police came, but my father came out with a gun and drove them away. He said they wouldn't subject our grandson to any torment. We were afraid they might take my father, but nothing happened. My mother and I bathed him in herbs, fed him herbal infusions to strengthen his immune system. And he grew up so healthy, oh God. She sighed, took a sip of tea, and continued, and Serbi, my youngest grandson, my middle daughter abandoned him when she left with another man. He said he didn't need the son of another man, but she left, knowing I wouldn't abandon the little boy. He was mischievous, to say the least. I didn't know where to find him. He would hide in the attic among sacks of straw or disappear in the thickets by the river. He caused so much trouble, bringing me to tears. Once, I bought a brand new silk dress, and he cut out all the flowers from it. I was getting ready for a demonstration and found my dress torn to shreds. I almost fainted. I scolded him a bit, but it was useless. Another time, he would take something brand new from me. A shadow of a smile touched his lips, and Alice felt even more sorry for her. Her soul held so many warm memories, but what about her children? They probably didn't remember those moments. Their own lives took over and didn't allow them to stop and remember the kindness that was now distant, but at the same time so close. Alice couldn't understand how someone could not carve out at least a couple of hours a week or a month to visit a beloved person, someone who had dedicated their entire life to them. Christina's husband passed away when their children were very young, and she had to work alone to provide, clothe, and gather firewood. Later, they even tried to marry me off in my youth. I was quite attractive. She pointed to a portrait on the wall where a happy and carefree beauty, with thick braids down to her waist, smiled, and next to it hung a portrait of her handsome husband. But I knew that no one would accept my children as their own. Besides, I remained faithful to my husband. He was so kind to me, caring, and he loved both me and the children. She spoke about her husband with such warmth, a twinkle in her eyes, as if they had been together just yesterday. Alice sighed as she looked at this thin, slightly hunched, and clearly aged woman, and then her gaze shifted to the wall where portraits of her children and grandchildren hung. They'd all looked so cute, smiling, and happy. What happened to each of them? What hardened their hearts so? Alice, could you go to my son William? Christina stood up and made her way to the chest by the window with effort. She opened the lid, took out a bundle, and handed it to her neighbor. Here, take this to him. It's my savings. Let him share them among everyone. I haven't spent it all, and sometimes I couldn't finish my meals and drinks. I wanted to help them. I can't wait any longer, my dear. Take this to him. Alice sighed and shook her head. Are you sure, Aunt Christina? I'm sure, dear, I'm sure. I've been saving all these years for a reason. Take it. I know I can trust you. Accept it. Alice decided to visit William in the evening, fearing that during the day people were usually at work, and she might waste her time, especially since she had to travel to the other end of the city. She took her husband with her and set out on the journey. The door was opened by a woman swaying from side to side, emitting a strong smell of alcohol. I asked Harry to talk to his sister and resolve the apartment issue within a week. I explained that I had found tenants ready to move in a month, and I needed to at least conduct some cosmetic repairs, like wallpapering. Upon hearing this, Harry began to curse, accusing me of being harsh on his sister. Don't you understand she's going through a tough divorce? All you care about is making money, he yelled. He had no intention of evicting his sister. Let her stay there. Why would she spend money on renting an apartment when there's such an option? So tell your tenants that the apartment is not for rent. That's my decision, end of story, he concluded. Upon hearing his final words, I burst into nervous laughter. The laughter was so intense that tears involuntarily rolled down my cheeks. Harry stood there in a pompous pose, not understanding while my laughter, almost choking me, continued. I tried to stop, but looking at his arrogant demeanor, the laughter seized me again. It took about 5 minutes for me to finally calm down and start speaking sensibly. You know what, my dear husband? Right now, you'll call your sister and tell her to pack her things and move in with your mother. Then, you'll gather your things and do the same, a generous act of goodwill. Move in with your mother, and you'll all live happily ever after. I even know that over there, during your common Joe time, you'll have a discussion about me, criticizing me for cruelty and hypocrisy. Well, honestly, I can't comprehend why you assumed that living in my apartment, and especially accommodating your sister for free, would give you the right to puff up your cheeks and assert your authority, telling me how to live. Moreover, you probably expected me to accept it meekly. Now, let's say goodbye, divorce. I'll file the papers myself. Seeing that after my tirade, Harry still couldn't believe what was happening and thought I was inflating my own value, I decided to expedite his departure to his registered address. I approached the closet, took his suitcase, and swiftly began packing his things. Once everything was packed, I handed in the suitcase, warning that the day after tomorrow, I would come to my apartment and wanted to see it without his sister. Otherwise, I would involve the police. Do you think I married you out of love? No, I married you for the apartment. And now that I know what kind of person you are, I'm leaving myself. I didn't think you'd be so ready to kick people out onto the street for a penny. Harry nervously exclaimed. Good riddance, I said as a parting word and slammed the front door behind him. Well, now I have the experience of marriage not based on great love. I thought myself, it's uncertain which is worse. A month later, I had divorce papers, and what's most interesting, 2 months later, I got promoted at work to head of the department, and Harry ended up working under me. It's like a reverse plot of the movie Office Romance, I thought when I learned this news. Indeed, life has a subtle sense of humor.